everyone. Welcome back to Sacred Stories. It's been a minute. I got smacked down with a virus for a month, and I am so thrilled to be back. And first conversation of, we'll call it season 2 of Sacred Stories with Vanessa Quarantello. So it's so wonderful to have you with us, Vanessa. We'll go into your introduction and your story in a second. I just want to bring us into sacred space together for a moment and share what's been on my heart lately, which has been this idea of a third door or a third option. I've been thinking a lot about kind of different polarities that we've been feeling in our lives. Maybe more black and white thinking, and this can be in terms of how we navigate relationships. It can be in our work life. It can be in the happiness that we create for ourselves. And I've been feeling into the third way, new sneaky ways of doing things where we actually get to have it all and we don't feel like we're pulled between one or the other, black or white, right or left. And so my blessing for us today as we listen to this beautiful conversation is to stay open to a third way, another possibility that presents a creative and aligned way of dancing with life and of creating our lives. So may we be open to a third way together. And I've been feeling more and more that as we listen to other people's stories, we hear our own. And I just have to say, when Vanessa and I hopped on our initial Zoom call, we were connected actually through Laisha Howard, who I had a conversation with a few months ago, which was so great. And as it happens, amazing leaders lifting each other up. Laisha connected Vanessa and me, and the first time we ever talked, I was just like, oh, soul sister. We got into all sorts of good stuff. We got into family of origin, we got into life visions, we got into healing. So it's really wonderful to welcome you to Sacred Stories and to dive into your thoughts today. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's really for me to thank you for having me. It's a real honor. It's been such an enjoyment to connect with you as well, and how cool it is when the universe does its thing and you get to see it happen. So that's the real feeling I got when
magical. Yeah, it's so magical.
Exactly.
Will you tell folks just a little bit about yourself before we dive into your sacred story?
I would love to. So my name is Vanessa Quarantello, and a lot of the time I go by Nessy. My healing arts practice is called No Greater Love by Nessy. And I came up with the name No Greater Love because my grandmother Lillian on my mom's side would always look at me and my sister and say, I have no greater love than I do for you. And she was just such a big part of my life. And from a physical resemblance to, I think, just a lot of soul connection, it was just wonderful to have had a grandma like that. So I wanted to pay an homage to her. And she was an entrepreneur, and she focused on estate sales and antique appraisals. So, my whole life I had been surrounded by that type of thing. My mom was interested in it. And for a moment in time, I thought that was going to be my path too. So, it still very well could be, but for now, I'm really focused on my healing arts practice, No Greater Love. And I offer Reiki, breathwork, meditation for individuals, groups, and workplace wellness. So I was really encouraged to make this pivot in my life because I had dealt with my own childhood trauma and workplace trauma. I worked in New York City for the majority of my career, um, for different investment banks. So working on a trading floor, really, and a pretty um, capitalistic environment, if you will. And unfortunately,
Like super warm and fuzzy and gentle, right?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot to be said on the positive side. I felt there was so much growth and um, uh, interest in people and in stories and in businesses, and a lot of the wisdom there. But it is a challenging environment, and it is a hard thing to do day in and day out. Although it was my choice, when it was time to leave New York, I came back to California. I'm a native Southern Californian, and had done some healing work on my own. I had started doing yoga from about the age of 14, and
Yeah, really young.
really just, yeah, I was lucky enough to have a good family friend introduce me to Bikram yoga, and I loved it. It was I felt very hippie. We had this wonderful teacher who, these classes are taught in, I think it's like a 95-degree room.
Yeah.
And he would, be in his little like bikini bottoms, leading us through class. And what I always liked about him is he incorporated a lot of humor into it, because I find, when we're doing that kind of stuff, it's so serious and it doesn't need to be. And I don't think that's the purpose of it, or at least that's my interpretation. And so,
I just have to interrupt. I keep coming back to this again and again, like the power of using humor to heal, the
yes,
power of using humor to navigate sticky stuff, challenging conversations. Like, oh gosh, it's like
yeah,
everything. It's
I
everything.
agree.
Yeah,
And I don't think it minimizes the severity of some situations. I don't think, a lot of people talk about bypassing,
right.
but when I facilitate in breath work, I love to pick music that I think people will really connect with and find that love, um, and connection to. And we do a lot of laughing in my classes too, and a lot of screaming. So
Yeah.
it's like, I think, people forget, like, laughing is an expression of our throat chakra. It's clearing things out. It's hearing our own sound.
Mhm.
And um and yeah, I'm so grateful for people that I can just get on the same page with and laugh, because it's a very serious time. Obviously, the pandemic has produced a headwind and a drag on all of our lives. Um, and I also feel, coming into this general election, it's been a lot of divisiveness too.
Yeah.
And when we can try to, bridge that gap, I think even just within ourselves through some laughter, or there's nothing like laughing together, because it's like recognition in the other
It's like
person's
such
soul.
a connective force. It's such a
Yeah,
connective force. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think sometimes, people feel really broken when they're approaching um, healing. And I didn't want no greater love to make people focus on that part, although a lot of serious conversations and a lot of serious processing is ongoing. I think it is important to find that light side of ourselves, because there's a lot of relief in that. And my teacher David Elliott, who I learned breath work from, he's wonderful in the sense that he's making jokes the whole time, and we were talking about serious stuff,
Uh,
but he's got a really beautiful demeanor and a southern humor.
mhm.
So it was something that I, really connected me in. And I also, we can talk about it more, but I love music to help people too, because it's so healing. And sometimes you can't express how a song makes you feel, but in your soul, what it does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of like making this whole logical experience a little more illogical with that.
Yeah, I love this because I'm thinking about both music and laughter can transcend words, that there are times when words just can't quite capture it. Like we're limited, like the feelings are so profound, but
Yeah.
that music and laugh, just like a good, like peeing in your pants belly laugh, or even just like a nervous laugh that you're able to share with another person because the situation is awkward or whatever. So
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good basic measure of humanity too. I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
it doesn't matter where if you're, interacting with someone that doesn't even speak your language, you can find something, pretty funny together, and that helps to lighten a situation or draw the connection in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's also, a reminder for myself to be
Mm-hmm.
light and
Yeah.
um, try to relax around it. But back to, I think I didn't complete what I was saying about
Guys,
David is
yes, yes.
he was saying, spirit loves to work with us when we're joyful. And when I heard that, it just hit me because, my grandmother Lillian, she would, she would crack me up, she would
Yeah.
a lot of funny things to say. And she had kind of a self-deprecating humor
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed. And she was, to me, always so glamorous and so beautiful all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so astute in her business. Honesty was a huge principle of how she, led her life. But, she sure made time to enjoy life too. And I love that embodiment of pulling that in, because I think sometimes when people do healing, they feel it might be a given that they're already broken. And I don't think that's fair.
It's fair. It's like like just so not helpful. And I think
Yeah.
one of the I get choked up even just thinking about it is being able to hear someone say you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Mm.
No brokenness here. You're exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
I want to, I know we haven't finished your sacred story, but I have one more question for you
Yeah.
about Lillian before we kind of go back
Sure.
to that. What do you think it was in her that enabled her to experience so much hardship in her life, but to choose joy?
I think that she always found a way. And she was raised by my great grandmother, who immigrated to the US from the Ukraine. And she was stern. She was very hard to live with, to be around. I think she's probably like the original, micromanager, like first generation,
Yeah.
my grandmother. So there was probably a lot of pressure on her to, be American, but also, she couldn't get away from the grasp of her mother.
Yeah.
And when she was in her 20s, she met my grandmother, or my grandfather rather, and she got married and left. And I think that provided a lot of relief to her,
Yeah.
to have the distance. And later in life, she took care of her mother and made sure she did the best she could, helping her transition into her later years.
Mhm.
But I think there was such exuberance for her to have pulled that off
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a way. And I think that was her version of breaking some intergenerational trauma too.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Cutting her own path and starting her own family. Um, and she was so honest about all those things.
Mm.
So it was a really refreshing relationship that I had, because when I would go stay with her, it felt like I was going to my friend's house. It was like very clear she was my grandmother. I mean, it wasn't, you know, um, anything like that, but we could stay up all night just talking and sharing things. And, she had these huge walk-in closets, and she was like, crazy about keeping everything perfect. I mean, you opened it and it was like a big waft of mothballs,
Right, right. Classic grandma smell. Yeah. Yeah.
but she was so meticulous in that way. And I got to take a lot of her clothes.
Mm,
And she became a painter later in life. So my sister and I have some of her artwork.
wow.
And it's just, she was just such a model for, um, I think, recreating yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Breaking free, breaking paradigms. Like what? Yeah. What a model of that for you. Wow.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So,
Oh, thank
so
you. I
yeah,
have a picture. I have a picture in my mind. So it's so
yeah.
powerful. Wow. So I know we got sidetracked by joy, which is a wonderful thing, but you started to
Sure.
share a little bit about going back to Southern California after being on the
Yeah.
trading room floor and where that journey has taken you and kind of how it's shaped your sacred story.
Sure. Yeah. When I was in New York, um, I had started to look at my own life. I guess that's what you kind of do when you get into your 20s and 30s and have that independence. And trying to feel like where I fit in and what resonated with me. And that led me to kind of look at my own history, and I realized, there was a lot of stuff there that I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So yoga was pivotal for me. But I also found myself getting involved in a lot of toxic relationships that I think mirrored maybe some of the behaviors that I saw from my parents, and I started to create my own behavioral patterns.
Yeah.
So I tried traditional therapy and found some of that to be useful, but I always felt weird that I was getting diagnosed with something, like
Uh-huh.
I know I didn't fit into a box.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, I came across a wonderful woman about 7 years ago, and she did a form of, she's a licensed therapist, but she's into intuitive studies.
I love it.
We would kind of combine the two, and it was like fascinating. I had a lot of homework to do, and a lot of academic reading, and I just kind of loved like the mix of it all. So I started getting even more curious about stuff, and I wanted to connect with people that were on a similar path.
Mhm. What
And
was the Vanessa, what was the mix that she was giving you? Like what were the different elements?
it's different every session. Like
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's like life coaching.
Yeah.
Other times it's, getting into like a deep somatic meditation where you're
Yeah.
feeling into your body to say, something's not feeling right in my left shoulder. What could that be attached to?
Right.
Um, Sometimes it would be, sharing of her experience to another woman. And,
Mhm.
just hearing that, like, it
Yeah.
was really important to have someone that got on my level, but also just let me be expressive of myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just knew there wasn't a lot of people encountering that or knowing that that was available. And I, like I said, I wanted to connect with people that were doing that.
Mhm.
And I did some yoga teacher training, and, really was um, surprised by the science of yoga. It goes so deep, and it's so much beyond, these postures that we see in I think the westernized version of it.
Yeah.
So there was, at the time I was living in New York, and in Brooklyn, there was a place called Maha Rose, and
Mhm.
they offered all these wonderful modalities like Reiki and hypnosis, and, you name it, top to bottom. And the
Yeah.
woman that ran it, Lisa Levine, like, I mean, the definition of spiritual meets, every day meets welcoming me. You just felt love when you walked through the
Yeah,
door.
yeah, yeah,
And it
yeah.
was like, in New York too, I think everybody's so worried about the external,
Mm,
whether it's protecting themselves or image or competition or whatnot. And then you could kind of just walk into this portal at Maha Rose and you didn't have to go through all of that. And I started just kind of ticking things off the list.
mm.
And I got to the breathwork part and I tried it. And it was like, what is this? I've never um, felt such ascension,
Oh, such
almost like
yeah.
a psychedelic experience
Uh-huh,
almost,
uh-huh.
but where you could make it stop at any time. And they did sound healing as well, which
Mhm.
really just blew me away, because if you think about the impact that vibration has on water,
Yeah.
and then our bodies are mostly water, so it was just all of these kind of subtle things. It wasn't like I was denouncing all my belongings and going to sit in the Himalayas and
Right.
meditating for years. And so I just started to realize, like, what a winding road, this self-discovery, healing, whatever you want to call it, was. And like I said, when it came time to leave New York, um, David Elliott had a training open, and I said, I'm going to go for it.
Mm.
And
Can
when
I
I
ask really quick, because I want to like get more into the feelings. So that
yeah
first time you had breath work done, or when you did breath
yeah
work, tell us more about the
oh
ascension. Like,
sure.
what was it that happened? Yeah.
Well, it was like, so they get everybody in this room, and we all lay down, and the woman that facilitated it was Erin Telford, and she studied with David Elliott. And she was just this incredible creature herself. She's just, when you see someone, you're just curious about them.
Hmm.
And I was like trusting of her. And they do a lot of like telling you what to expect, because it's a very physical practice,
Hmm.
because you're not used to oxygenating your body and changing that balance between you know it's kind of like letting your brain go offline so that you can really feel into yourself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was like I went alone. I didn't recruit anyone to come on this journey with me.
Yeah.
All new people in there. And then, she took us through this. And then, I forget at which point, but she asked you to scream as
Yeah.
loud as you can.
Yeah.
And it was like, I love it. Because, you don't get to hear
Group.
that sound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's always got this negative connotation, like, or what are you, angry? Do you have an anger management issue if you want to yell and scream? And that's not the case. It's like you need to, just clear it out of here sometimes too.
It's such a
Um,
profound energetic shift. Like I feel my entire energy shift when I
it's
do
it's
it.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's really therapeutic. And also, like, the first time I did it, it was scary because it was so loud. It was so many people coming and sharing that. And then you go through the class, and you're given a lot of time at the end to really rest and
Hmm.
feel this restorative kind of processing occurring. That's how I feel. And
Yeah.
I felt melted into the floor. And I also just felt, just like you said, like, you are exactly where you're meant to be.
Mm, yeah.
And
Yeah.
through all this searching, um, and trying new things, and you name it, nothing had given me that relief like that. And I was just fascinated. And yeah, I went to a group last night, and I was having a really hard day.
Yeah.
For some reason, just happens. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and
Yeah. There's some stuff happening in the world right now.
it's
Not to
going on,
mention this whole
but
adventure of being human, which is its own,
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the future of our country. I'm worried about, I mean, everything just feels a lot different, and we weren't prepared for any of this change. So I think, what I like to tell people, and I have to remind myself, is it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
we're gonna
Blessing.
have days. So yeah, I went to the studio and my friend was facilitating, and again, like, it clears it all out so that you can, you know, I think, have a better impression and perspective of whatever it is happening,
Yeah.
and to connect with people, even if you aren't talking and sharing, like, just knowing there's other people showing up for this kind of work, really is supportive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and for, those who are listening who even just want to try a little bit of piece of this, of a good scream, screaming into a pillow works really well. Or if you're in your car, that's another good one. Many of us live in apartment buildings or have neighbors close by. So there are ways to kind of play with it that still make space for not scaring people that you're being, attacked or
Yeah.
or something like that.
Sure. And
Yeah.
I've done that, like, when things are overly good, like, I'm just excited and I feel my energy is a little too out there. I feel like I get right back in my body. And it's
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
mean,
I think too, I'm thinking about I'm thinking about the power of using breath work and other energy practices to reconnect with to remember that we are spiritual beings,
yeah,
and to get back to our like deepest, truest essence, which I believe is love. Um,
yeah,
and I think, I've been thinking about kind of therapeutic models that only use talk therapy, which
yeah,
to me seems just a little bit more like in our heads and is missing the more somatic, energetic pieces. And so as you're sharing, like both the opportunity to be more in our bodies and feel connected to our deepest essence of love and of oneness.
yeah.
So powerful. Yeah.
So, so powerful. And I think the way you just put that together is, like, just beautiful, and
You feed
um
me up, Vanessa.
well, like, the discovery of that, I don't know if a lot of people know that's in existence. And I think, people can chase it by self-medicating, or I was doing a lot of people pleasing and caregiving,
Yeah.
um, and I come to realize, like, oh, that's actually a manipulative behavior. Or um, yeah, I think it's a really easy thing that we can all do. And you don't need anything spectacular. You just need the commitment and the time to sit with yourself and 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 explore. So yeah, it's pretty profound, but at the same time, it's a really subtle thing. So yeah, I like the mystery involved.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And you're going to lead us in some breath work at the end. I want to touch on what you just mentioned about overgiving and caregiving and people pleasing. Because it happens in like it can happen in so many subtle ways, like I've been even just thinking about, I'm someone who I love bringing people together and I have an amazing tribe of friends. And I also like, there's just one me and I only have, so
Yeah,
much time and so much ability to give. And so even thinking about like wanting to invite everyone to everything, but I can't always do that. And so how to like make decisions about who I actually want to have present at gatherings without feeling bad that I'm like hurting someone's feelings, because how I show up as a friend and how I treat people is like so it's everything.
sure.
But it's also about like what do I actually want? So I'd love to hear you, however you want to riff on this, just the idea of um, over giving in our relationships. And I'm thinking too about like helping the other person versus letting them have their journey and kind of how we dance with that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I felt like a really fine line to figure that out.
Yeah, it's a dance.
Well, But yeah, I think, for my origin, um, I had, of course, family, but my mom and dad really were kind of absentee, never lacking in love, but I think they couldn't get out of their own ways
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
And um, I think that I internalized that as not being wanted. And so I
Mhm.
would try to show up as much as I could. And also knowing there was a perfectionist element to that too, because I didn't want anyone finding out that, the things that went on at home. And they
Yeah.
might know that because I act this way or look this way or my grades aren't a certain way.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that let in, mixed in with some body image issues and, all these things that we face.
Yeah.
So it was like also, coming into relationships, doing the most and showing up as best as you can and not realizing what pressure that puts on the other person too.
Oh, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. A friggin' men. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm thinking about like the misunderstanding that if I do everything, then I'll get love, right? That we kind of construct when we're not getting our needs met as
Yeah.
young people. And then I keep coming back to this in my own life too. The idea of like, oh my gosh, if I let this person fully show up as themselves and are loved for exactly who they are without them needing to be different, then I get to do the same thing too, right? It's like this beautiful reciprocal um, foundation,
Yeah.
really. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think having some more awareness around that, which did not come easily, but it kind of reminded me of my own value and this idea that in relationships, no matter which type they are, we can take turns taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Not always going to be that symbiotic
Yeah.
exchange happening. Like sometimes people just they don't have it in them, or they don't even realize that you're trying to give, or vice versa.
Right.
And I think too, along the lines of COVID, I'm hoping that people take a step before approaching someone if they've had a negative interaction, because we just don't know what people are going through anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Yeah. Well said. I'm thinking too, kind of along the lines of boundaries, of both creating them and breaking them down and all that. I was speaking on the phone to my bestie the other day, and we were talking about relationships, and she was talking about this kind of realization that she had that especially in partnership, but really any sort of intimate relationship, that it's kind of always about both creating clearer boundaries for ourselves about what we need and what we can give and all that, and simultaneously breaking down boundaries. And
Yeah.
the word softness comes in for me, like opening up with so much more softness. That it's
Yes.
always a both and, or maybe even kind of simultaneous opposing truths at the same time. Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because that softness or that vulnerability, um, it's really a strength to like come to the table with, here's what I need.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for myself, I had always modeled myself as being self-sufficient. Like I don't need to ask for help. I don't need to. I've always been independent because I've had to, and so now it's like being able to say no, being able to like clearly define what I need, and not feeling bad for it has been so freeing. And I think that it's deepened a lot of relationships with people because you can kind of cut through the fluff of where are we with this. And I think that people they gravitate towards people that understand their worth and their value.
Yeah.
So it's been a weird process for me to do.
Yeah.
But in the same time, like, I think that I've become such better friends with myself
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's not as hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about the ways like when my friends have been like lovingly clear about what they need and what their boundaries are, and
Yeah.
I know that they're being direct with me, and I'm able to give them that, then I am in turn able to ask for that too.
Yes.
So I feel you. I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, which is like the caretaker, so I'm
Mhm.
I'm
Okay.
there with you on all this stuff. Even though I
Yeah.
keep trying to get other numbers, every time
Yeah.
I take the friggin' test, I'm like, man, it's a 2 again. So yeah. Have you found ways that you've been able to bring breath work or the other healing modalities that you use into um, any of the things you talked about in terms of like uh, creating new patternings around trauma or how we dance with boundaries or
Yeah.
overgiving? Are there ways it's kind of shaped that or helped you shift things?
For sure. And I think that there is like that neuroplasticity involved with
Yeah,
it, where you can change the patterns of the brain.
yeah,
Um, and I think that you know, like I'm a lot less reactive now because I feel, my brain chemistry has hopefully changed a bit because I've been breathing so consistently. And um, I'm really inspired by the other breathwork facilitators that speak to their own experience. And Aaron Telford put it, they mine the gold, right? And then
Mhm.
they share
Yeah,
it with everyone else because um, it is so important to talk about and to be with and to laugh about, like we said,
yeah,
um, and to not have to talk about it all the time and be completely controlled by,
right,
our
right,
healing journeys and our traumas. And who wants to be defined by, just a few events in your life?
yeah,
But yeah, I think that but the consistency and the practice has really provided like a different physiological response,
uh-huh, uh-huh,
and I think that itself has helped me to take things a lot less personally.
yeah,
And it's been such an incredible thing to just let it go. And and not I like this quote from like George Harrison, and to the effect of like, he said, if you stop using a microscope to like analyze your friends, essentially like things get a lot easier. And
I love her. I
I
love
love that,
it.
I'm gonna turn another quote out. Like obviously Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we
Yeah.
just lost her, but she said something else like, in marriage it helps to be a little deaf. you know
Yes.
like,
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh, and I'm thinking, I mean, there's so much like around just the energy of how we hold things. Even the comment about, you know, like mining our tender spots, our trauma, our wounds for golds, like that. Yeah, we take something that was really shitty or really hard, and we're able to mold it and shape it and transcend it and turn it into something beautiful, have new, deeper understandings of ourselves, but also to do it like from a place of, okay, now let's have some fun with this, like let's bring some lightness in.
totally.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, I used to wear these, it's like almost like looking through like, these pictures of ourselves in the 80s and the 90s and like
Yes.
war. And it was like, oh God, like that kind of thing, and having a good laugh about it and saying, yeah, that's who I was and that's how I best wanted to represent myself. But now that's gone.
Right.
I'm on to the next kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's a beautiful thing to have some release around that. And I don't mean to disqualify or not honor our experiences or our needs, but we don't have to be as tightly wound, I think, in getting what we need.
Yeah. Yep. Softness again. It's like my word of the year is like
Yeah.
breathing some spaciousness into it. And I just keep thinking, like, as you're speaking about, this is repatterning our nervous system. It's like creating a completely new,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, because the brain has this negativity bias
yeah.
too, where
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
we were hunters and gatherers and we lived in this fight or flight. So it's centuries of undoing this, programming. And I mean, once you kind of get to understanding it, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't live in that time any
Right.
longer. So,
Right. Right.
inquire within and see
Yeah.
what I can.
We got this.
Yeah,
We can create something new. Thank goodness. Right. Oh, I love it. So I'm wondering if you'll lead us in a little bit of breath work
I would
that
love
we can
to.
try
I would love to.
together.
So I do a few different types, and today we'll just do some. They call it box breathing sometimes, and it's done in fours. But the other type that I focus on, usually in my longer facilitated classes, is a 3-part active breath. But yeah, I usually open up the ceremony with the kind of box breathing style just to help people ground, get into their bodies. And I love this practice because you can do it for a minute and feel a difference
Mm,
in it. But yeah, if you want to join me,
perfect. Yeah, I'm going to mute myself and let you take
okay,
it away and guide
yeah,
us through it. And then we'll kind of talk about it after. That's perfect.
pleasure. So just readjusting a little, but yeah, if you could just lightly tap your eyes closed. And since you're seated, maybe just finding your hands somewhere on your thighs and either putting them down or up. Down tends to help with grounding a bit more. And when we're trying to be open to receiving, it's nice to turn the hands up. But whatever feels natural to you, there's no right or wrong here. And just slowly starting to think about shifting the way we breathe. We take so much of our oxygen in shallow breaths through the chest. And this time we just want to shift it into the belly in a 4 count. So breathing in through the nose and making sure that abdomen rises. So for 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to hold it at the top for another 4, 3, 2, 1. And then simply exhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Holding again. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding. 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll go for one more round of inhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And just holding for a moment, maybe just taking a nice inhale to refill and letting it out this time audibly through the mouth with a nice long sigh. So coming out, and just keeping the eyes closed and perhaps feeling any places on the body that feel strengthened or maybe in need of some attention. And just thinking about that spot right between your eyebrows, your third eye, the seat of consciousness, and maybe connecting in with an intention or working with some kind of guide. Sometimes that comes in the form of nature. Maybe one of the elements calls to you. I love to look at the wind coming through the trees. That feels like a big part of wisdom from the earth. or even an ancestor or loved one. And just being there in observation and perhaps sending out a nice bright light from this point, heading a bit backwards from the hairline to the top of the head, and then just emanating outward to fill up the room you're in, to encompass your body all the way down along the sides to the bottom of the feet, just letting the face drop and remembering that our subtle energy field extends 4 to 6 feet in either direction. And just being with that, taking a nice, beautiful inhale and exhale. And as you're ready, you just tap your eyes open. Beautiful. Good. And that's just a short practice to kind of ground back in. Yeah. And, you can turn the noise down a little.
Yeah. Oh, so many. That was so beautiful. Thank you. And had a lot of, I had a few different powerful experiences during it, and I'm really excited to hear from our community too, what
Yeah.
emerged for them. Um, I noticed that I was having trouble a little bit, even just for the 4, 4, 4, and 4, like that I was about ready after 2, you know? And so just like noticing that our breathing is often so much more shallow, right? During the day. That was
Totally.
one thing.
Totally.
Yeah. And then I noticed I loved just being reminded that our energy field extends so much more beyond our physical bodies and that we are so much more than our physical bodies, and the ways that we're able to touch others and connect with others that is like far beyond even the ways that we conceive of time and space. That was really
Yes.
powerful for me.
Yes. I'm so
Yeah.
glad.
Yeah.
It's I'd love to to help because there is so much wisdom for us to tap into in our body. And it's like, how do we get there? And how do we open the mind? And it's been shown too that breathing into the belly that way, nice and slow and repeatedly, sends that signal to the nervous system that you're safe. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really beautiful way to step into some self inquiry and just to settle down.
And also just to notice the way, like I was noticing, oh my goodness, I've been holding my stomach in. I mean, part
Yeah.
of it is because I'm recording and we're having this conversation and I'm like on, you know, but
Yeah.
also just all of the ways that, society tells us that we can't let it all hang out, and the ways that that translates. So yeah, you said something before we recorded that breath work offers us the space between our thoughts and our spirit. And I
Yes.
love that so much. So thank you for guiding us to connect with that space between our thoughts and our spirits, Vanessa.
It's a gift that I love to share. So yeah, it's my pleasure.
Oh, so good. So good. So I want to end today with uh inviting you to just, I think that, one of the things that is like really, I would say, the touchstone of my life is this understanding that we have so little control over so much of our life. And so we better be living the life that we want to be living. And certainly this worldwide pandemic has put that like front and center. And I know for, many of us, we've been really stepping back and being like, okay, what is actually important? What do I actually want to be doing? I was having a conversation with a friend this morning on a walk about what if we only lived into the things in our lives that are a 9 or a 10 and just like got rid of 8 and below, like what a radical, amazing way to be. They've been feeling into that too. And one of the mottos for No Greater Love is be great. And I loved that. And so I think I've been thinking about, for myself too, like what does a really great life look like? Or maybe knowing what it looks like, but the ways that I'm not following through and being in my own soul integrity. So this giant preamble is all to ask you, how do you define be great? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me it's like be great and spread love. I think that can be in the form of a lot of things, but I think it is about valuing yourself enough to know your worth and execute on that, which I I found takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's been uncomfortable to do that. Um, but I think it's so necessary to feel authentic to ourselves, and that is the part of be great for me.
Mm,
Um, that I love to feel into and impress upon others. Um, and yeah, and some days being great is listening to your energy and spending the day in bed watching movies. It doesn't always have to be out saving the world, but I do think it's important to listen to ourselves and like I said, just execute it as best as we can on those things.
hmm You know what I love about this is because often people will give an answer that's like blanket for all the time. And you just shared this beautiful nuance of honoring, like, it gets to change and we get to reassess and we get to offer different things to ourselves depending on whether we're having like a giant bright light shining day or a more tender day or anything in between. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your favorite way, Vanessa, to tap into like what your heart really needs?
I'm lucky enough to live by the ocean,
Mm.
and um, going down to the beach, and I've like gotten back into the sport of surfing, and
Oh, yes.
by no means am I a surfer, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I just notice the feeling I get afterwards,
Mm.
where it's kind of a reset,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I feel 100% different. And that's being in nature too. And I think that the elements reside within us
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And when we can go and be, especially in I think the ocean, which is a force greater than us, um, it's for me the clearest way to kind of get back into myself.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, as a fellow like nature, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know what word I would use. Maven, aficionado, like no compromises on nature. I mean, I'm as much as I can. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think for me, what I keep coming to realize is the metaphors for the human experience that nature offers us, um, the ocean and the idea of surrendering or perspective or reset. You know, the birds who are just like so fully in their birdness, not comparing themselves to other birds. Just like there's so
Yeah.
many rich metaphors that um, remind us of what's really important. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Oh, what a treat to be able to be in conversation. And I just know that people are going to be touched by different parts of your story. And I'm really excited to continue to be in dialogue with you and with all of our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, I'm going to just close with a blessing for us
Sure.
as we've soaked up these beautiful words. May we each open to the sacred space between our thoughts and our spirits. May we tap into our own inner knowing about how to give ourselves that spaciousness, even if it's just one breath, especially if it's just one breath. And may we have the courage to feel into soul aligned and soul integrity living, the courage to listen to the calling of our soul and of our spirit, and to live in a way that truly honors that and elevates it, and to connect with others who honor that in themselves and then in turn with us. So may it be.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much, Vanessa. What a treat. What a treat.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us.
You got it.
Yeah.